All right. So thank you everyone for joining us. Today, we are joined by Dr. Bhuvan Anhalkar, and today's webinar is on the role of business analysis in a data-driven organization hunting for value. I am gonna, get right to the chase and just kind of tell you what we're gonna be, this is the schedule. Thank you for joining us. My name is Randy Ennis. I'm the Vice President of Sponsorship at the South Florida IIBA Chapter. I'm only going to take a few minutes to introduce Dr. Bhuvan so that he can begin giving us just a great message on data-driven analysis. And so today's session is called The Role of Business Analyst in a Data-Driven Organization. We'll have about 5 minutes, possibly more, just for a question and answer session. And then I'll have a few closing remarks just to tell you a little bit more about IIBA and upcoming events that we have. Please feel free to select that chat button on your screen and ask any questions in the chat box. It would be helpful if you can add them as we go along. That way Bhuvan can answer questions in advance during the session. And you'll also be able to bring up any questions you have during that time as well. I want to introduce Bhuvan to you. Bhuvan is an accomplished IT professional and a professor of IT at the University of South Florida, Sarasota, Manatee. He is a founding consultant at Method Science and a co-founder director at Platify. He has mastery in business analysis and requirements modeling, software engineering, big data strategies, agile processes, mobile business, and green IT. His domain experiences in banking, financial insurance, government and telecommunications. He's a thought leader, a prolific author of 20 books, including Big Data Strategies for Agile Business and The Art of Agile Practice. I can go on and on and on. There's so many great things that he has done. He's a fellow of the Australian Computer Society, IEEE senior member, professional scrum master, life member of Computer Society of India and Baroda Management Association, members of SDPS, past president of Rotary Sarasota Sunrise and St. Ives, Paul Harris Fellow, Discovery Volunteer at NSW Parks and Wildlife, and a previous T member. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let Bhuvan give us just a great message about how business analysts can thrive in a data-driven world that we're living in.
So first of all, thank you, Randy. And I was just mesmerized at the picture that you had put up, which is of course mine from my website. And I just wanted to add that I used to be clean shaven once upon a time. There is no plan to be like that for multiple reasons, which is a topic of another presentation. So I do want to welcome everyone. I can see I got friends and colleagues in the past from Australia as well. And there are many other friends around the world who had expressed their interest in knowing what I'm trying to say over here. So first of all, I'm very thankful to Randy and to the IIBA South Florida chapter for this opportunity. As always, any such opportunity to share thoughts is a prized opportunity. And as some of you know, I am now belonging to University of South Florida, full stop. Once upon a time, we used to be Sarasota Manatee as a separate accredited educational organization under the umbrella of USF. But from 1st of July, we are all one. So I belong to University of South Florida, Muma College of Business, School of Information Systems and Decision Sciences and Management. And I do belong to the Sarasota Manatee campus, and you can see the beautiful picture of my office on the bottom right. And today I'm going to share with you my thoughts on how this particular role of business analyst has evolved or is continuing to evolve, and what you and I can do in order to make it more effective in a data-driven organization. And Randy was very kind in reading out all my profile, although I told her there is no need to read it all out. But an interesting aspect of my professional work is, although currently I'm a full professor in University of South Florida, many years I used to be a consultant, and I have done practical hands-on BA work along with other kind of works like Agile and so on. And a lot of that in Australia. And my foray into IIBA was more like competition, because I had written a large section of standards for Australian Institute of Business Analysis in 2010, 2011. And every time I tried to compare the two, I was asked whether I am a CBAP or not. So I had to go through the exam, and I became a CBAP in 2013. And ever since then, I have managed to understand what really BABOK is and apply it in practice. And then, of course, its extension for Agile. And now I find that it is the standard for business analysis. And business analysis itself is a key skill set, competency for any good organization, both for projects and for operations. So let me share you a little bit more about that.
Uh, Bhuvan, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but there's a little bit of a box on the right side of your screen that we're seeing.
Okay, is this any better?
It's a lot better. Yes.
Okay,
If you could. I'm not sure if you
okay,
move it a little bit. Oh, it's gone now.
okay, good. I mean, I just had to remove
Okay.
the right hand side window. Feel free to interrupt if things are not going right, Randy.
Okay, no problem.
So, this is what I have been asked to share. So this is what I'm going to stick to in terms of BA's role in a data-driven organization. And this is my agenda, but I may meander a little bit here or there. In fact, this entire day I was attending a conference called Cyber Summit, organized by Cyber Florida, which is under the aegis of my university as well. And I have included a few more slides just this afternoon on cybersecurity analysis. And if anyone is interested, by the way, the slides are available for you for me to share with you. So business analyst, it's a interesting word. Um, it was really requirements modeling once upon a time. And I'm a whole time object-oriented modeling person. And we used to then use the Grady Booch standards, and then Jim Rumbach standard, and then Ivar Jakobsen's use cases to capture requirements. Obviously, requirements is not the only thing a business analyst does. And suddenly business analysts started adding so much value to what was happening between the end user, or the user that's specifying the requirement, and those who were developing the solution, that it became a profession in its own right. And the other key differentiator, of course, is it is not analytics as such, although we deal with data, but analytics involve a fair amount of knowledge and understanding and application of statistics and statistical methods, machine learning algorithms, and so on. But business analysts, they were there before data took off, as it has in the last, I would say, 5 years. So BABOK has described this particular definition. It is a bit verbose. Uh, I don't need to read it out, but it does provide a context to what we are talking. Business analysts have been around much before data driven organizations became a common term. But on the bottom right, I have put value add, and business analysts in undertaking all these activities are actually focused on adding value. Now, some of you are probably familiar with this BACCM, the core competency model. I actually loved it. It came about much later than the original Baybock, and I do like it. And so I have put it here only with a modification or a superimposition of the word data on it. So what we are discussing is how the function of a business analyst handles these six aspects of the core competencies in the context of data. Business analysts have always handled needs, they deal with changes, they are looking at alternative solutions in the context of business and to the satisfaction of stakeholders in order to provide V for value. All of this does not change, but I have got later in the presentation a table which highlights how we need to think data when it comes to these six aspects. And then, is it a profession that is growing? Is it a profession that is getting recognized? I find it is. And the particular quote or reference to LinkedIn report is actually from IIBA. On the right, there is at least one course, one program with these 7 courses at Purdue University. And as a professor, I used to teach Agile project management to my MBA students. And they had come up with a petition for having a course that is specifically called business analysis. Now, because we have been merging right now and rearranging ourselves as one single university, that particular course has been on back burner. But my hope is that given the value it adds to businesses, it's a crucial course to have in any MBA program. And in case of Purdue, it's a full-on program itself. Although I have not been a part of that, but it is just something that I came across. And also, if you see the USF Sarasota Manatee campus, one of the biggest things that we have been doing is encouraging critical thinking. And if you ask me, more than an end user, more than a product owner, more than a scrum master, more than a developer, and more than a tester, a business analyst is undertaking critical thinking. Critical thinking and problem solving skills are the heart of business analysis. Now, I mentioned all these roles. Obviously, those of us who are good in Scrum or familiar with Scrum know that we don't have the role of a business analyst as such in a Scrum Agile project. But do we need the skills? Absolutely. So to me, a successful project is where people, irrespective of their title, are practicing business analysis skills. So now we need to come to our specific topic, which is data. If we look around us, everything seems to be driven by data. The understanding of COVID-19, this whole pandemic, the response that we are providing globally, the way in which we have tried to flatten the curve, and I'm saying we, irrespective of geopolitical boundaries, it's all based on data. So we really need to understand what we mean when we say a data-driven organization or a data-driven decision-making process. And of course, my expertise and my interest are in big data. So this is one of my most favorite slides, which if you have heard me before, you probably have seen it. This is big data that requires 5 to 6 burly men push it inside a truck. And if I ask you the size of this big data, well, it's really big. It's a massive 5 megabyte in 1956. So when we talk about data and big data in 2020, we need to keep in mind that there is no hard and fast, black and white, clear definition of what is big data. It is data that we find difficult or challenging to handle and manipulate in the context of today's decision making. So, how does this apply to business analysts? Their view has to be on data that is difficult and challenging to manipulate, difficult and challenging to handle, but is going to provide V for value to the organization. So there is no magic as such in data, but we need tools, technologies, and techniques to handle that data. And a business analyst is involved in all three. And I'll show you as we proceed through this talk how. Now, a business analyst needs to keep in mind 5 characteristics of data. These 4 I've taken from IBM. I acknowledge there's a lot of work. Arun Sathi's excellent work on big data that I have read very carefully. It has very high volume. So now when we talk about big data, we are talking about half to 1 terabyte very easily and perhaps even more. It has a very high velocity. And now we are, whether we like it or not, moving in the 5G space, which means the velocity of our handheld devices is itself going to go so high. We are going to generate a lot more data than we have ever generated. Thirdly, our data is not in rows and columns. Nowadays, when we have to classify data, one mechanism of classifying data is transactional, macro, and alternative data. And financial markets have been doing a phenomenal amount of work in alternative data, which is the data that an organization does not own, does not have any idea where the source of that data is, and yet that data can provide valuable hints, valuable insights into decision making. And I'll show you a little bit more again later. And then veracity. The word dark data is becoming popular because it's not just negative or bad quality data. It is data that is sitting out there that no one knows what to do with. We have a vague idea that it's there, but we cannot utilize it to produce value. So when a business analyst looks at data, and I had mentioned 5 aspects of data, those are the 4 that are well known. And here is the 5th one, and that is V for value. And I have specifically kept the figure number because that comes from my big data book. So I'm acknowledging my own book and the big data framework for agile business, BDFAB. Now, in order to produce value, we still need to focus on business and what is it that the business wants rather than only data. And that does not mean we ignore data, because interestingly, in the big data machine learning space, data can provide insights that we did not know exist. And this is the care that a business analysis competency needs to take care of. Is there something out there that may be unknown to us, but known to the software, known to the AI system that we are using in decision making? So that's something to keep in mind, which then brings us to, shall we really be calling ourselves just business analyst? Is there an opportunity to call us business data analyst? I'm not asking us to change our title. There are variations to business analysts, including cybersecurity analyst and data analyst and so on. But if you go to the IIBA site, you will find there is actually a very nice hint towards this introductory paper, which I liked very much. And I recommend, if you are an IIBA member, to go and have a look at this particular paper. It is not only talking about business data analytics as one word, but it's also showing a nice comparison between what we now call traditional. It's not very traditional, but the contemporary business analysis skills and the data analytics skills. and a business data analyst is bringing the two together. So again, what's the main focus for business analysis is enabling change BACCM model. Data analytics is actually gleaning insights, extracting value in terms of insights from data so that better decisions can be made. And that has also been defined. I have defined it as greater accuracy than before, shorter time period, and more number of points, contact points where decisions are taken in an organization. Relation, it provides the context for the research question. Here we are really applying statistical techniques in data analytics. Architectural domain, fascinating. I have done a fair bit of work in enterprise architecture, business architecture, and so on. I find that in this particular comparison, which is not mine, by the way, it is really data architecture that a data analytics skill set is focusing on. And of course, features and functions versus visualization as a umbrella term. And we are trying to bring the two together for the future. So business data analytics, there is a small process given. I have, in fact, my own view and my own process, if you like. And currently, as we speak, a very dear friend of mine, Steve Blias, and I, we are working on a book together, which is called Strategic Business Analysis for Data-Driven Organization. So our proposal and everything else is ready to go, and we are approaching a couple of good publishers because we are continuously working on how the process for business data analytics can be improved and can be layered, because we do need a lot of strategic thinking when it comes to application and use of data in business decision making. Until now, business analysis was focused on improving business decision making, capturing better requirements, and so on. Now it needs to do that, keeping in mind the sources of data, the quality of data, all those 4 or 5 characteristics: volume, velocity, variety, veracity, and whether it is going to produce value or not. So this is my viewpoint in collaboration with my friend and co-author, Steve Blias, that really the whole data gamut starts with observation, then recording of that observation becomes data, processing of that data becomes information, then we try and identify patterns and see if that information has some knowledge, some insights, some correlations, which is then used in inferring what that analytics is trying to say, what that knowledge base is trying to say, and eventually it is insights. So this is the action I need to take and decisions. And by the way, the top of the triangle in the world of artificial intelligence is also changing. And each of these layers are made up of mini loops. And on the top, we see so much of decision making being handed over to AI systems. So that brings us to, ethics and artificial AI values and explainable AI and so on, which is a different topic. But it is relevant to business analysts who are functioning in a data-driven organization. So what should we be looking at as BAs? Well, there are 6 keywords here. And the first one is data set. We need to think in terms of data, but all the time what value it's going to provide. We then need to think in terms of tool set. Later in the presentation, I have included our BABOK key competencies and so on, wherein BAs are involved in evaluating relevant tools. And that competency becomes very important when it comes to handling data-driven decision-making in an organization, because the tool set is vast. Of course, each tool vendor says they can do everything, but they can't. Mindset is, okay, let me come to mindset last. Handset is our smart device that we are carrying with us, and in a corona stricken world, that has become a key gateway into my entire universe. And not only it is dealing with visualization and the various tools and techniques we need to visualize the results properly, but it also needs to comply with rules and regulations. For example, people with limited ability to see data need to be provided with alternative ways to, if not visualize, to be able to hear data. There are governance and stipulated regulatory requirements when it comes to handset. And there is this all-encompassing security and privacy, which is the one in the written in the bottom that covers all of this. And then, of course, we are focusing on value all the time. What is it that my end user, my stakeholders will get if I do data set, tool set, handset, and mindset? So we are, as BAs, involved in changing the mindset. And what do we really mean by that? Well, organizations have been traditionally used to the final decisions being made by humans. And a data-driven organization hands over a certain aspect of decision making to machines. And the fine balance between what Professor Tad, my another fellow researcher, calls a combination between artificial intelligence and natural intelligence, AI, NI combo, is what this change in mindset involves. So, so here is again a verbose slide. Being the professor, I'm used to it, so please forgive me for that. But the gist of this is the BACCM model that I had mentioned, BACCM, I should say, M for model, core competency model, talks about change, need, solution, stakeholder, value, and context. I've given the description as in BABOK, and then how it changes or how it needs to be enhanced further in a data driven world. For example, change, data is not the change. Data will enable change to happen, but that data itself is not the change. And being an academic, I have given examples of how data as a means to change. In the last column, I've given examples of how university courses are changing, how the change is really, it requires everything in that is there in this previous slide. Changes in data, changes in tools. So data is changing as it deals with our students and their evaluation. Tools are changing. We are using Canvas, but we are using Canvas a lot more. We are using Blackboard Collaborate. We are using Microsoft Teams to deliver full synchronous lectures. Handset, of course, we have to advise our students what is good for them, what is convenient, comfortable for them, and then a change in mindset, right from our topmost administration, President Corral, right down to my dean, Dr. Shan Kabango, my chair, Dr. Kaushik Datta, myself, and all my students. All of that is changing. The needs are the core needs of the organization to deliver value to the students. Data is the opportunity to use, to provide for that need in a much optimized and better manner. Solution, I mentioned the tools like Canvas and Microsoft Teams. Who are our stakeholders? Whether I'm a data-driven organization or not, my stakeholders is a key aspect of my business analysis work and how they're going to then benefit with my data. In my case, of course, student, teachers, researchers, staff, and even administrators and our wonderful technology support staff, who is far more active preventing hacks and phishing and ransomware attacks on our systems. Value. Do my students achieve the learning objectives that were stated in my syllabus? And how can data help me do that? That's the analytical work that I'm doing when I'm applying the concept of value to a data-driven organization. And yes, for every student, I've got analytics that are telling me whether the student is performing, whether the student is receiving the learning objectives or not. And then the context. I mean, COVID-19 could not have provided a more horrible, yet a more learning context for us when it comes to being a data-driven organization. So in the next 7 slides, I'm going to zoom through them, being aware of the time. But I just want all of us to understand that Baybock is doing a fine job of providing the overall framework for what is business analysis. And chapters 3 to 8, which of course all of us who have done CBAP need to learn by heart, are providing the outline of the work that a BA does. And I have taken some keywords and I have tried to highlight how each of them will be enhanced, modified, improved upon, extended when it comes to data-driven organization. So the stakeholders, which includes the cloud vendors and of course the cybersecurity professional that we need to pay particular attention to. Governance in terms of what are the KPIs that decide whether business analysis work has happened or not. And of course the tools that we will be using for governance of business analysis. And performance improvement, forget about bringing about a change in 3 months time, definitely not 6 months. Change has to be brought in small increments, and that's what the keyword Kaizen is. We need to remember our skills and competencies for subjective interviews, but we also need to do a lot more exploration, research in order to elicitate requirements in today's world. I mentioned the word alternative data, which I find the financial industry, and I come from Dow Jones in the past, is doing a phenomenal work with. Then, of course, communication of the BA information has to happen iteratively with shorter feedback cycles. And then, of course, stakeholder collaboration. In fact, uh, one of the people in the audience today is Keith Sheringham from Australia, and Keith and I have written a book on knowledge worker services, a great book, of course, and I invite you to have a look at knowledge worker services. And it is, in a way, changing the entire mechanism of how solutions are put together. So it is impacting business analysis work because knowledge workers are going to utilize data, and any requirement for such knowledge workers has to keep in mind that they are going to uh, be the decision makers at the end point of the organization. Requirements lifecycle management, there is no such thing as a single project now. And of course, we need to do assessment of changes on an ongoing basis. And approval of requirement also has to happen dynamically and needs to keep almost the entire holistically the organization in mind. This is again of great interest to Steve Blias and myself as we write our book, Strategic Business Analysis, assessing the various states in which we are. And again, current state and future state is not going to be two separate states, in my opinion, but actually a very dynamic melee, a dynamic flux of how the organization is in the current state and future state. Assessment of risk, I have a fair bit of material on what I call known unknown combination. So there are risks that are known to both artificial intelligence and natural intelligence, but then there are others that are known to one and unknown to the other. So we need to make use of those tools in a strategic manner in order to help data-driven organization. And then, of course, defining the change strategy is basically maintaining a dynamic change strategy. Requirement analysis, I'm a UML person, and use cases and activity diagrams used to be my favorite, but I find that all of that is also changing in the agile world, and I have no opposition to that. But even today, I insist my students do good requirements analysis and capturing and modeling of requirements before they move to code in whichever language, Java or C++, or even a scripting language like Python, which is very popular. And then solution evaluation. It's going to be a what if scenario all the time. And good BAs will actually make the vendors, if it is a vendor-based solution evaluation, demonstrate their ability to help in decision making. We need to not worry about a standalone solution that says they can do everything. Solution evaluation in a data-driven organization means two keywords: integration and cybersecurity. And of course, everything else follows that. So those are our 8 chapters, and these are this ninth chapter in BABOK is the underlying competency. And each of these on the left are modified, extended, and applied to a data-driven organization. So analytical thinking and problem solving, we are going to build scenarios. We're going to do a lot of experimentation in applying this competency to data-driven organization. We need to be, of course, ethically and morally as true as we can, but adaptability of our skill set is going to be absolutely crucial. And I see that every day in my student community. The final capstone course in which my students go out in the industry, the ones that are able to adapt to the environment are the ones that are doing the best. We need business knowledge. It is not possible for a business analyst to say that I can do good requirements modeling without understanding that I'm doing it in the financial market or the hospital or the agriculture or whatever the domain is. Communication skills, including on social media, interaction skills, especially as most solutions, most projects, if you like, are agile. In fact, I would say all projects are agile. And then tools and technology, I mentioned that. We are going to use some tools. I've been using modeling tools, Star UML, and so on. But we also need to use data-driven tools such as ERWin and many others in the market. So I have highlighted 6+1 groups of competencies and how they are changing with organizations becoming data driven. I also want to put in a plug for the cybersecurity analysis that is happening on IIBA site. So without taking you through all of this, it's something that we need to be aware of. And if possible, for those of us who are interested to also get this particular certification, there is a fair amount of discussion in that particular certification, and there is a guide that goes with it. But specific to today's discussion, I found 3 or maybe 4 areas of data and security in very interesting. Data security at rest. We are classifying and categorizing whenever we are dealing with data. And now with security, we can do exactly the same. For example, a business analyst could be easily involved in classifying and categorizing the user log data. The log data provides perhaps one very rich source of security related information to the organization. There are, of course, many others. I have provided these as a reference. Data security in transit. When we worry about encryption and the level of encryption, we can easily talk about 256-bit encryption in today's world, but perhaps there are more variations to it in terms of where and how it is being applied, vulnerability of nodes, vulnerability of physical loss of a end user device, and so on. Then, of course, the standards, SSL, TLS are, SSL is TLS really for all practical purposes, and BAs need to be aware of them, even if not necessarily fully technologically conversant. And then with most of the work in the world now happening online, digital signatures, certificates, identifications, all of that are important ingredients of BA work in a data-driven organization. And because we are talking about cybersecurity, here is one more plug for my MUMA College of Business. We are looking for some good researchers, some assistant professors. In fact, it's an open title, open role call for application. So in case any one of you are interested in becoming a professor like me in the cybersecurity area, please consider applying to it. Now comes the keyword agile. I have a lot to talk about. I'm running out of time. So I'm just simply going to mention that there is a lot of work I had done and many other thinkers much better than me in terms of how agility and BA come together. 10 years back, 2010, there was a thought process going on in the industry that with Agile, BA is finished. It won't exist. Actually, the reverse has happened. Business analysis as a skill set, as a competency is not only there, it is actually thriving. And I had written these two Qatar executive reports, fairly substantial reports. Part one was dealing with the individual BA, and part two, organizational adoption, in which I have worked with various banks and telecom companies and travel agencies in Australia primarily. So this is the work I'm doing with Steve Blias. And what we have done is looked at how business analysis can be applied strategically as against tactical or operational application. Tactical BA is more or less uh, project based, but strategic BA is way beyond project and looking at a fairly long term and a fairly holistic data driven viewpoint for the organization. So there are opportunities, there are so external and internal risk and compliance and environment. These are all driven by data. So classic example of innovation, Amazon and Uber and Airbnb. And the most well-known statement is that the largest taxi company in the world does not own a single taxi, Uber, and ditto with Airbnb not owning a single hotel room. The skills that were applied to come up with these businesses is BA skill, business analysis skill, even if the title of the person who was doing this work was not BA. Here comes supply chain, not just physical supply chain, although that is very important. And in the coronavirus world, we are surviving with supply chain, but also the electronic supply chain and its optimization, not just automation. That's the key to the work that BA do. Environment and CSR. And one of the biggest areas of research, and I'm putting together a research funding proposal right now as we speak, is to find out the correlation between lockdown and carbon emission. And surprise, surprise, some of the largest carbon emitting um, and congested cities in the world have suddenly become carbon reduced or carbon free. And that includes typically from India, that where I come from, cities like Delhi and Bangalore, which were really suffering from pollution, have suddenly dropped. So that's an area of BA work. And then finally making sure that everything that happens in the organization is compliant. And why do we need machine learning? Again, we cannot make sense of data. A BA himself or herself cannot make sense of this vast amount of high velocity data unless he or she uses the tools, which are the ML tools for that purpose. There is a process around it. And I was asked to finish within 40 minutes. So I'm aiming to finish within 40 minutes or a little bit more. But what I would like to highlight also is, depending on who is listening to this chat or may listen to the recording in the future, there are lots of areas where we can actually explore the future role of BA. Already cyber is happening, business data analytics as a role or a subtitle within business analysis is happening. But there are again many more areas to explore. And I do remember examining a PhD thesis. In Australia, we don't have a defense as formal as in America, North America, but we do have a fairly rigorous examination process. And I remember examining a thesis from Monash University in Melbourne, and it was on business analysis work. So there is opportunity for research there. Also, BA and data science intersection needs to be explored a lot more than what I have presented to you today. And then, of course, can we apply analysis skills as against statistical analytics skills? I should not say as against, but in collaboration with, for defense, agriculture, and GRC. So what I have presented today is a strategic approach, a long-term approach, the one that includes data, but in the context of what BABOK already has provided. So the BACCM and all the good work that has gone on in BABOK, now version 3.0, it's all of value. What we are really discussing is how it changes, how it needs to be modified, upgraded when we are dealing exclusively with data-driven organization. So the focus is still on business and business processes and decision making, but now in the context of data. Cybersecurity, I believe, is going to be integral, if not already, to BA work. And let's not ignore Agile at all, nor should we say that Agile has eliminated the BA skill set. If anything, it has actually improved the or focused more on BA skill set, even though we may not have BA as a title. A good product owner cannot function as a good product owner in a Scrum project if he or she does not have business analysis skills. So that's what I had planned to present. The presentation is available for all of you. So is the recording, my contact, and of course I'm the only Bhuvan Unhelkar in this universe right now. So you can reach me on LinkedIn as well. And I'm going to now stop sharing and move to Q&A, or also accept any comments that you might have.
Wow, Bhuvan, thank you so much. That was great. And that was
Thank you, Randy.
baby also. Thank you so much for sharing today. And I'm sure many of you have some questions. I'm sorry, go ahead and ask your questions in the chat window. Sorry, I'm trying to share my screen here as well. And
okay, I have got Alec who has a question or a comment. Please share your thoughts on the concern. Data is almost all focused on the past, previous sales, etc., but does little to provide guidance in unusual or disruptive events coming in the future. Is being data driven like driving, looking in the rear view mirror? That's a good question, and I'm going to try and answer it, Alec. And first of all, thank you for asking the question. And in terms of data, there are at least two crystal clear characteristics that I had discussed. One is volume and the other is velocity. I know that when it comes to volume, we are really undertaking descriptive analytics. And when it comes to predictive, and in fact, taking it further to prescriptive analytics, we need a good amount of current data. So a common question that is asked of me is, could we have predicted coronavirus, the COVID-19 pandemic? And in my humble opinion, it actually is bordering on unknown. But in retrospect, there are so many interesting data driven insights coming up. And I'm not sure if they have been fully validated, but there are posts I've read on comparing the car parks, the car park satellite images of a large hospital in Wuhan in China, where a few months ago, the number of cars that were parked outside were much less. Also, in the previous year, the same time, number of cars parked were much less than they were in July, August of 2019, which then with further analytics is leading to a potential insight. And I'm being very careful that this is not validated, not that I have read of, but a potential insight that the virus had probably started spreading around that time. The other correlation is between the number of cell phones that stopped operating in that area, in that region, between July, August, September time period last year, 2019, leading to a potential insight that so many people had stopped using, they were not there, they probably died, and therefore their phones were not being used. Now these are wild looking insights, but believe you me, the alternative data domain is dealing with very wild correlations. like correlating number of cups of coffee sold in London CBD and its impact on the London stock market, or weather changes and its impact on sports, and so on. So I would say data-driven organization needs to consider the whole aspect of how that data is providing the insight. Is it historical? Are we doing descriptive analytics? Are we doing predictive analytics? How current is the data? How rapidly it is changing, and so on. So that's a long answer to what you're asking, but I appreciate your question. There are a few more questions. Um, uh, Marilyn, okay. Any advice on BA students looking to break into the industry? Well, certification, and IIBA has got 4 tiers, so 4 layers of certification, and I'm sure a initial level of certification will help breaking in the industry. It requires a more detailed answer. I will chat about it offline. Do please reach out to me. And now, Nauma Namuna, you mentioned about BA and data scientist tag term. Could you please elaborate on this? So the one interesting differentiation is analytics and analysis. And it just so happened that the two terms are so close to each other. But when it comes to actually applying the skills, I find that they are separate, distinct entity which overlap. When we talk about data science, we are really talking about machine learning, artificial intelligence, big data, and how that data can be analyzed. When we talk about business analysis, we are talking about the users, the end stakeholders, and what is the value that they are looking for in the solution. Our stakeholders also include internal decision makers. A teller in a bank who is sitting across the counter is able to offer some insight of some value to a customer across the counter based on analytics. So there is an overlap between the two. So we need to understand the two functions and then see where and how they overlap. And those couple of slides I showed you on business data analytics straight from IIBA actually explain that very well. And then there is Ramesh Mane. Thank you, Bhuvan. Okay. And he's saying, question specific to data in the retail world. Does the range decision and execution? Yes, a phenomenal amount of predictive modeling is happening in the retail world. And I do remember 2 years back attending a conference entirely on data science or AI and retail in Chicago. And you know, there is, to give you a very simple example, Amazon is not only loading what you and I have ordered on their trucks, but they are also loading what we are potentially going to order. So the amount of analytics that is happening is phenomenal, and the amount of business analysis to come up with such an opportunity wherein if I have ordered a toothpaste once in 2 weeks time, then 2 weeks from the last order, a toothpaste is loaded on an Amazon truck in anticipation of the order, thereby reducing the time for delivery. So same applies with retail. Yes. And Alec, okay, excellent analysis and a great presentation. Thank you, Alec. And Anu is asking for an example of prescriptive analysis. So I'm sitting here in Florida in Bradenton, Sarasota area, which is actually a beautiful tourist town. And Sarasota has a seasonal population. So from November to March, we who actually live here are sort of restless because the population has tripled. And that is because all the hotels are occupied and the snowbirds are coming down from north, from Boston, from Seattle, from Chicago. Many of my friends, they come here regularly, and from Canada. One of the key and most interesting challenge from data analytics viewpoint is to be able to predict the hotel occupancy. Now, as we improve with predictions, hoteliers want to know what should they do. So if a predictive analytics says that your hotel occupancy is going to be 85% from November to March in, let's go forward to say 2023, then prescriptive analytics is going to go further and say that increase the capacity because you want a bit more lag or bit more slack, or it's going to say collaborate with another hotel to see if you can expand your capacity of rooms that are being offered. So in short, prescriptive analytics is AI suggesting actions rather than simply predicting what is going to happen. Instead of saying this is going to happen, prescriptive is saying and you should be doing this. That's the difference. I think I have covered all the questions so far, if I'm not mistaken. Um, I'm just very thankful to everyone for taking so much interest and asking so many questions. And of course, following my Indian, Australian, and now American accent that I'm trying to put on.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Bhuvan. Thank you so much. I think I can speak for everybody. That was just very, very valuable. And I love your response to that last question. I was going to ask a question about how to kind of continually have that mindset that you spoke of kind of thinking in a way where you're thinking about how can data improve support decisions. And
Yes.
I think someone has a question, but that pretty much answered my question. 9RB, I think someone raised their hand. You can unmute if you have a question. I don't know if I'm. Oh, unmute. Okay. Yeah. Hi, you had a question?
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I have a question for my good friend Bhuvan. This is Jean Kabonga.
Yes, sir. John is our dean, campus
Wow.
dean. He's making sure I'm doing the work I told him I'm doing this evening.
Yes, great presentation, Bhuvan. So the question is, how can big data help strategy evaluation? In strategy, the evaluation is really critical these times because of the internal and external factor being changed very quickly based on the current environment. So I just figure out if we can speak to how big data can really help strategy evaluation.
So there are, I had mentioned there are three characteristics related to data. One is transactional, second is macro, and third is alternative. And transactional, we are all quite aware of it, quite used to it. Most of the banking and the airlines and hotels and their analytical work takes place on transactional, or in other words, data that is organized in rows and columns. The next level of analytics and therefore corresponding business analysis work happens on macro data. A common example is there are 100 cars queued up on exit 210 on I-75, and suddenly and I am sitting here and I'm trying to figure out what's the route like to go to Tampa airport. And Google Maps is suggesting don't take I-75, you take some other route because 100 cars are lined up. How did that information come about? How did that insight come about? Well, your phone and my phone and everyone else's phone is always providing bouncing off information of our location, whether we like it or not. And if 100 phones are static on I-75, it tells us that there is a traffic congestion. So we have utilized macro data. That means any data inside the phone or on our cloud has not been used. Simply our presence has been used. And then the third opportunity is when people are talking about an organization outside of the organization. So I'm flying United and they serve me good vegetarian meal and I write about it. Or you are flying United and they lost your baggages and you write about
Your
it.
phone's in airplane mode, so I can't help you with that at the moment.
Sorry, that's my Google taking off on my cell phone. So what I'm saying is when it comes to strategy analysis and validation of strategy, all these three kinds of data, and in fact, in my opinion, alternative data plays a major role. And all the big data tools, starting right from a simple, I should say, a simple rapid miner using transactional data through to fairly complex tools that are using all Hadoop based unstructured data, are able to build scenarios. So when you ask about verifying strategy or strategic analysis or strategic formulation of strategies, big data can help immensely by enabling us to create scenarios. The what if scenarios, they can be created on the fly with these tools to help us understand whether our strategy is going to work, whether our strategy is a valid strategy or not, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years down the track. And one excellent opportunity to apply it is in the corona pandemic, where strategies related to businesses, small businesses, especially in Florida region, hospitals, and what's happening inside those hospitals. And also, Sean, you and I being educators in education domain, if we create a strategy, we can use AI based tools that will analyze all these three data types to provide validation, the what if scenarios. The best industry that I know that utilizes this to create strategies and validate strategies is the financial markets industry. So I used to work for Dow Jones, and through that I come to know a lot more about Reuters and Bloomberg and all these financial markets organizations. They are entirely based on what if scenarios, and all strategies for buying and selling stocks and options are validated through data science. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you. That's a great question, great answer. Thank you everyone for joining us. I'm really gonna just close out with a few things. So I'm sure you all are familiar with IIBA and IIBA.org. Thank you, Bhuvan, for kind of sharing quite a few things about IIBA and the offerings that it has. There are several certifications that you can explore and earn at IIBA, including the core certifications and some of the certifications that Bhuvan mentioned today, including cybersecurity analysis, agile analysis, and business data analytics. And you can find out more about those certifications at IIBA.org. Also, become a member. Thank you for joining us today, but we want to see you all the time. So if you're interested in joining, please visit our website, southflorida.iiba.org. We would love to have you. We'd also love for you to volunteer. If you are interested in volunteering, please email our president at southflorida.iiba.org, or you can leave a message in our chat and we'll contact you personally. But we would love for you to join us and helping us build our community here in South Florida. There are also some webinars that are coming up. Judy Alter, she is with IIBA Corporate, and she will be leading a webinar on 5 characteristics of a great leader, and that will be on August 18th. Also can save the date for September 29th. Danelka Sarah will be joining us for a webinar at that time as well at 7 p.m. So thank you again for joining us. Bhuvan, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And stay tuned because we have some other great things that we'll be doing with Bhuvan, and so you'll see him more this year. We're just really happy about our partnership with Bhuvan and having him as a great resource to our chapter. And thank all of you for coming. And so have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Cheers. Thank you, Randy, for a great job. Great coordination. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye,
Thank
Sean.
you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.